Hello everyone, in this video we are going to check out the round number 12 of Tata Steel Masters 2025. The game is between Pragnananda versus Alexis Sarana, and the second game that we're going to check here is Gukesh versus Jordan Van Forest, because both these players are leading the tournament. Pragnananda and Gukesh, it's going to be fun to watch, so let's begin. So Pragnananda with the white pieces starts out the game with 1 d4, and Alexei plays the move knight to f6, c4, e6, knight to c3, d5, takes, and now we have queen's gambit decline, bishop to g5. The standard way to play. c6, queen to c2. What is the idea of queen c2? Basically stopping black from playing the move bishop f5 by already covering the square. Bishop goes to e6, e3, knight goes to d7, and now we have the move bishop to e2 by Pragnananda. Bishop d6 by Alexis Sarana, and now bishop to d3 by Pragnananda. So already it looks like Pragnananda has already made some wrong choices by putting his bishop on e2 and moving the same piece twice. I think maybe playing bishop d3 makes sense directly, or even knight f3 makes sense. But okay, the game can be continued. But okay, he played bishop e2, bishop d6, bishop d3, which is also not wrong, but it basically wastes a move. h6, bishop goes h4, g5, bishop g3. We have a bishop trade. Queen goes to e7, knight goes to f3, and now g4 by Alexis Sarana. I personally did not love this particular move. Why? Because after g4, you see, like, the pawn on g5 already limits the knight on f3. The knight is not really having many squares to go. Only on e5. That's the only square available for the white knight. But after g4, what's happening? Now, basically, white played knight h4. And now first, you have given a square to the knight. Second, the knight can maybe jump on f5, or maybe bishop f5 can also be an idea on the cards. And black can now never play h5, h4 if white goes short castle in the future. So you see, I personally think there are many downsides of the move g4. And he could have simply played long castle and the position looks fine. But okay, we have g4, knight goes to h4, knight to b6, short castle, exactly as I said, long castle, and now a4 by Pragnananda. Already, whenever you are having opposite side castle, always go for the attack. And you see, the loss of g4 here is, now black can't really think of attacking white's king side because of the knight on h4. You can't really push the pawn. Alexei plays king b8, a5, knight goes to c4, and now knight to a4. White can also play e6, but I guess why to give options to black of playing b6, b5. So first Pragnananda waited by playing the move knight to a4, knight to d6. If black goes for capturing the pawn, being a bit greedy, after knight c5, you see, white is having this open file and putting maximum pressure on the king side. So whenever you are going for the attack, always don't try to consider the pawns. Always think that if you sacrifice the pawns, it will only help your rooks to get an open file and have some aggressive options. So that's why knight to d6 was played in the game, and after knight d6 we have knight to c5 by Pragnananda, putting the knight at the best square. a6 by Alexis Sarana, rook goes to c1. You see, now Pragnananda simply trying to get all his pieces on the queen side near the king. Bishop goes to c8 trying to defend, queen b3, and now knight to b5. So here king a8 is the best move, which is still very complex. I'm going to tell you why is this such a complex position. But knight to b5 was happened in the game, and this is actually a big blunder, as you guys can see the bar. So try to pause the video and try to see what will you play in this position if you're playing in the pair of Pragnananda's shoes. Okay, so knight b5 was a blunder. So first of all, Alexei thought that okay, now his king side, his queen side is as the same as Pragnananda, so maybe it's going to be a solid game, or maybe a draw. But what he missed was knight into a6, sacrificing the knight, and this is actually a brilliancy. B into a6, rook into c6, capturing the pawn. And basically what's happening, white has sacrificed a knight for 2 pawns. Actually not 2 pawns, but 3 pawns. Because he's eventually going to capture the knight and going to win one more pawn. Because you can't really defend it because of rook b6. That's the main issue. So in the game we had rook d7, knight c5, knight f5, first attacking the queen, and now capturing the knight. And now here after a b5, if white takes the pawn, black is having this rook b7, and black is having some sort of a solid position. That is why first playing a6, covering the b7 square, and now capturing the pawn and the king move. So now let me go back a bit. I want to discuss something. In this particular position, the best move according to the engine is to play the move king to a8. And it says that black is fine, but still, the position is crazy because after knight into a6, b6, rook c6, the position is definitely not easy to play. Bishop b7, rook b6, you see, this pawn is hanging, and definitely the position is definitely not easy. So going back a bit, that's exactly why knight b5 was played, knight a6, b6, rook c6, rook d7, knight f5, capturing the knight, pushing the pawn. I love the move a6. Rook a7, capturing the pawn. Now the king went to a8, the only square, and now we have knight to d6 with the threat of capturing the bishop, and that's winning, yeah. So Alexei played the move bishop to d7, and you see it's mate in 3. So you can pause the video and try to find the move. Okay, so Pragg played the move, and if you found the move queen b7, that's the brilliancy once again. That's the brilliancy, and that's why after queen b7, Alexei decided to resign the game. Why? You have to take it. But after takes, the knight protects the pawn. You have to play king b8, but after rook a8, it's a checkmate. The game is over. So that's why after queen b7, Alexei resigned. And now Pragg has scored 8.5 points out of 12, and he is in the first place. So now let's jump onto the game of Gukesh versus Jordan Van Forest. Okay, so now discussing the game of Jordan Van Forest versus Gukesh. So Jordan with the white pieces opens the game with 1d4, d5 by Gukesh, c4, e6, knight c3, knight, and now we have bishop e7. Kind of once against the queen's gambit decline. cd5, ed5. So I believe now this particular line is getting a bit trend nowadays. ed5, bishop f4. So you see, black has not played knight f6. So white cannot play bishop g5, pinning up the knight. That's why the bishop goes to f4. Black plays c6. You have this nice pawn chain. e3, trying to open up the light square bishop. Bishop goes to f5. Because if you allow white is going to play queen c2. And I'm just wondering that can white play queen c2? And yeah, white can play queen c2. Once again, stopping bishop f5. This can also be an idea. But we have e3, which allows bishop f5. Knight goes to e2, not developing the bishop to d3, but first developing the knight. Knight goes to d7. Rook goes to c1. So first finishing the development on the queen side. Okay. Knight f6. Knight goes to g3, attacking the bishop. The bishop goes back to g6. And now we have h4 by Jordan. So his idea is to play h5, kind of trapping the bishop. Black plays h5. Black can also play h6, h5, bishop h7. This is also fine. But he went for a bit more ambitious approach with h5, not allowing white to grab more space. Bishop goes to e2, putting pressure. Queen goes to b6, which is kind of the normal way to play. Attacking the pawn on b2. And now we have queen d2. And actually, the engine says that white can actually castle, because if black tries to capture the pawn, white can play bishop d3. And now the point of bishop d3 here is, white wants to play rook b1 at some point. At some point, not now because the knight is hanging. Because you cannot play rook b1 because the rook is hanging. So that's why bishop d3. And maybe after bishop d3, queen d3, now the knight is protected. So now white can play rook b1, and this is fine for white. But okay, we have queen d2, a bit solid approach. Knight goes to g4. Bishop goes to g5. Bishop to d6. And after bishop d6, Jordan played the move bishop f4. Bishop goes to e7, and he played the move bishop to g4. Bishop to g5. So it looks like both the players are ready for a draw. We have queen d8. Gukesh saying never say die attitude. He's still playing on with the black pieces. Generally, whenever you are having black pieces in such a strong tournament, you are fine with a draw. But he played queen d8. He wants to carry on the game. And now we have f3 by Jordan Van Forest, attacking the knight. So basically, if you take the bishop, takes, you lose a piece. And after takes, if you don't take the pawn, the knight is not really having any square and the knight is trapped. So that is why first playing knight f6, going back, short castle, knight goes to h7, we have a trade of the bishop, and now here Jordan played the move f4, which turned out to be a mistake. He should have played the move king f2, which is a bit more precise. Queen h4, rook h1, attacking the queen, and basically the point here is, after queen going back, you can capture a pawn. You can simply capture a pawn, and if black tries to defend it via queen g5, you can still take it, because after bishop h5, you are having f4, which attacks the queen and also the bishop. So basically, eventually the material is getting even. But instead of going this, Jordan played the move f4. Maybe he missed something. Queen h4, we have queen e1, and the idea still remains the same of capturing the pawn, which makes sense. And I'm pretty surprised that after queen e1, black actually found the best move, and it's a kind of anti-positional move, I personally believe. And it's a very deep logic. It requires a deep calculation and positional understanding. What is the move? You can try to pause the video and try to find it. Okay, this particular move requires a deep understanding. So if you found it, congratulations. f5. What is the idea of f5? That's a question. That's a big question. So for example, if black plays something else like knight f6, it allows white to push the pawn to f5. The bishop goes back to h7, and you will realize the bishop is simply bad, and white has already gotten more space on the king side. Maybe the rook can go to f5, f4. So the bishop is anyways bad. So that is why he first played the move f5, blocking his own bishop. It looks like at the first glance. But now after f5, it allows white to capture the pawn on h5. It allows, because now you cannot capture the bishop because you lose the queen. So basically after knight h5, Gukesh have to go back with the queen, and now bishop f3, and now the idea was to capture the knight, because you see the bishop is not doing anything. So the idea was all along to capture the knight, and you see the knight cannot go back because the pawn on e3 is hanging. So you first have to defend the pawn with the queen, and this gave the chance to Gukesh to capture the knight. And you see now Jordan is the one having the bad bishop, because all Gukesh's pawn are on the light square, covering all the light squares in the position, not giving any square for the white's bishop on h5. So this is a very deep understanding, and it requires a great calculation. So knight d1 protecting the pawn, knight b6, bishop to g6. So you see, this is a close position. Gukesh is having the knights, and Jordan is having the bishop. So Jordan is trying his best to somehow capture the knight, and now he's going to get the knight, because if Gukesh tries to move the knight, he's going to lose the pawn. So that is why we have queen e6. We have first check, and now capturing the knight. And now the position is even. Black is still slightly better because of white's weak pawn on e3. So we have rook f3 defending the pawn, and now knight f2, knight d3, and now knight to e5. So basically in this position, if Gukesh goes for capturing the pawn, here white is simply going to play rook e1, and now the problem here is Gukesh is going to lose the game and the knight. So that is why rook h4, and now white simply put his knight on e5, and it looks like a equalish position, and this is an equal position. b5, but can you believe that the position is only going to get wild after this. So after b5, we have queen c5, queen to h6, king f2, nothing is happening. Rook goes to e6, and now Jordan took his chances by capturing the knight, by giving an exchange sack, and now playing the move queen a7. So basically, this actually is favoring white actually, because after queen f6, now Jordan played the move rook g3, which was not the best. He should have played a4. And this is actually once again a very strong move in the position, because if black takes the pawn, you can play queen a4, and black's pawn structure is extremely bad. If black tries, rook h1 is the best move. And the point here is, if you try to play a5, queen e7, and black can defend this pawn. Like, black is not going to allow this pawn to become the queen. And if white tries to capture the pawn, you won't believe it, but capturing the pawn is the wrong move. Black first push the pawn. That's a very deep logic. What is the idea? After takes, this is the best option. If you try to capture the pawn directly, Now white is having this check. The king goes to h7. And now you cannot capture this pawn first because after rook b6, there is a big threat coming up because the queen protects the rook. So you first play the move rook g3, which threatens white to play the move rook g6. So first the queen have to go back, and now there is no rook b6. So now white can capture the pawn with no rook b6, and the position is fine for white. Slightly better for white. So you see, there is a deep understanding logic that requires to understand some of the craziest positions sometimes. We have rook g3 instead, which looks more human. Rook h1, knight goes to d7. So both the players are already playing on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. Knight goes to e5, rook goes e7, and now it's Gukesh's turn to sacrifice an exchange. Take. What is the idea? Basically, if you take with the d pawn, it allows queen check, and it's eventually after rook f1, it's a mate. So you have to take with the f pawn, but this allows f4. Rook h3. If you take with the pawn, there is queen d4, and it's basically mate in 11, as you can see with the bar. We have rook h3, fe3 check, king goes to e2, and now we have rook b1, which is again a blunder. Basically here, Gukesh was having sufficient time on his clock, 47 minutes. He should have simply took the rook, take the pawn, and this is winning. Check is coming in, or you are losing the pawn, and you are making the queen. So basically, it's still hard. You need to calculate stuff. And basically, white cannot capture the pawn because b2 is hanging and black is winning. But okay, it's hard. But I believe it is playable. But okay, rook b1 takes. But what I think here is Gukesh thought that this position is winning because he's having this c pass pawn. But it allows king f3 because you cannot capture the pawn because it allows queen g5 check, and eventually white king gets mated. So we have king f3, queen check, king goes e4. It looks like the king is getting mated, but it is not. Check, takes, push, check, check. And after queen c8 check, on the move number 51, both the players agreed to a draw. So this one was a wild game, which ended in a draw. Pragnanda won his game, so now Gukesh is also having 8.5 points out of 12. So Pragnanda and Gukesh are leading the tournament. Going into the last round, which is today on 2nd of February 2025. And in the third place, there is Northern Abdusattarov with 7.5 points, so already 1 point behind. So I think it's kind of a guarantee win for India now. Either Gukesh or Pragnanda is going to become. There is only single possibility. If both these players loses the game, Northern wins this game, then there is a possibility of going into the tie breaks, or else India is one of the Indian players is going to win the Tata Steel YKMZ 2025 Masters. Okay, it was definitely fun to analyze this game. So I hope that you guys have also enjoyed the analysis. If you did, then make sure to like and subscribe. I'm going to come up with these more interesting interactive analysis like this. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching Oneshot Chess. Bye bye.